We're live. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, and I should also say good morning, wherever you are dialing in from. I want to welcome everyone to the June edition of the ZER SCALE Masterclass. My name is Patricia Ifewulu, and I'm going to be your host for today's session. So, let's go through the agenda and see what we have for you today is on the screen. So our agenda today is going to follow our usual pattern. I will start by introducing the ZSK framework, especially in case there are people in our audience who are not familiar with it. Then we would have a live question and answer session with our guest, Miss Bella Ikeme. And after the live Q&A session, we will then discuss the next steps. So why this masterclass? ZER Africa is a purpose-driven consulting firm, and our value proposition is that we work to empower African businesses and leaders to help them turn their visions into sustainable growth. So we hold this masterclass once every month, and through the masterclass, we're able to share knowledge, we share tools, we share frameworks that African entrepreneurs can use to upskill themselves so that they can build scalable and resilient businesses. The session is being facilitated by yours truly, who is there before you. My name is Patricia Ifewulu. I am a senior advisor with ZER Africa. I'm also a governance, risks, and compliance professional and a lawyer by training. I have more than 20 years experience working in the financial services industry, and this includes stints at a pan-African multinational organization with subsidiaries in different African countries. I've also worked with a publicly traded a financial services holding company, which has subsidiaries in multiple sectors across Nigeria. And in this organization, the remit of my responsibility was that I was responsible for the strategic direction and the operational leadership of the legal, compliance, and governance functions. So I've implemented GRC frameworks across multiple jurisdictions that have served as catalysts for strategic initiative and business growth. I've also worked with boards across different jurisdictions in Africa. I've advised board and I've supported board in effective governance and sound risk oversight. So I bring all these experiences and with me, and because of all these experiences, I bring what I would call an African perspective to these conversations. And of course, I'm an Afro optimist. I would not be here if I am not. Okay, so let me briefly introduce the ZSK framework to our audience. It is a five-step roadmap that is designed to help African businesses move from vision to execution and to execution, from execution to sustainable growth. And it is built on a simple but powerful idea, which is that business growth does not happen by ambition alone. Now, business growth requires clarity of direction, it requires disciplined execution, it requires strong leadership, it requires sound governance, and of course, it requires access to the right kind of capital. To break down that acronym SCALE, S in the acronym stands for strategize your vision. So for us, um, growth begins with vision, and every business must be clear regarding where it is going, why it exists, who does it want to serve, and what success looks like. So, strategy is what helps businesses to move away from scattered activities into what I would term deliberate direction. The C in the acronym stands for champion excellence. Now, strategy without execution is not going to fly. So this pillar focuses on building operational processes and maintaining premium standard in everything that you deliver. So when you champion excellence, you're able to transition your business from what we call founder dependency to system dependency. The next letter in the acronym is A, and that A stands for Accelerate Exceptional Leadership. Now, a business can never outgrow its leaders. And here, what we focus on is on developing leadership pipelines and empowering teams so that they can drive that operational excellence forward. The next is L, and L stands for leverage governance for sustainable growth. Now, we know that many founders see governance as a boring check in the box exercise. But in the SCALE framework, we view governance as a competitive advantage because we understand that true sustainability requires a structure. And by embedding robust corporate governance, compliance and risk management in your operations, you protect your organization, and at the same time, you're able to build an organization that is capable of trust. The last letter in the acronym is E, and that E stands for expand your impact through growth capital. Now, as a business, once your strategy is clear, your operations are excellent, your leadership is strong, and your governance is airtight, you are already investor ready. You don't have to go cap in hand looking for capital. Capital is going to be the one chasing you. So this pillar focuses on how you as a business can now unlock that funding that you need to scale your impact across the continent. So this is a brief explanation of what the scale framework stands for. But I want to point out something, that what makes this framework very powerful is that these pillars are not isolated. They are interrelated and they reinforce one another in the sense that strategy S provides the why, excellency provides the how. So without high standards, the best strategy is going to fail at the point of execution. Now, leadership A is the engine that drives excellence. But without governance, leadership can become autocratic or disorganized. So, governance is the structure that allows leadership to lead with accountability. Now, capital E is often what businesses prioritize first. Businesses are always looking for financing. But in the scale framework, our position is that capital is most effective when it is the last piece of the puzzle. The reason being that it is the complete ecosystem of your internal strength that makes you as a business highly attractive to growth capital. So this, like I said, is the scale framework in a nutshell. So each step fits into the other, and in that way is able to transform your business from a local player to what we will call a pan-African success story. So, in today's masterclass, we are going to be focusing on the L, which is leverage governance for sustainable growth. And I am thrilled to welcome our guest today, Mrs. Bella Ikeme, who is a true powerhouse in the African corporate ecosystem, to share her experiences and insight with us on how businesses can leverage governance as a strategic lever for scale. I can see that Bella is already on the screen. Bella, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Before I, yes, I can hear you very well. So before I start throwing out the darts of questions, I want to read out your profile to our audience. So yes, Bella is a sustainability strategist. She's an ESG practitioner. She's a business growth advisor who is focused on helping African organizations scale with credibility, with governance, and long term value. She is the founder and the CEO of Kaizen Business Development Company, where she supports African businesses, founders, and institutions with ESG alignment, institutional readiness, and sustainable growth strategy. Bella is also the co founder and executive director of ESG in Action, a consultancy that helps African organizations integrate sustainability through ESG strategy, risks and materiality assessment, policy development, stakeholder management, data management, and of course, reporting. She also brings what I'll call a strong understanding of market positioning, influence, and brand credibility for African brands through her work with Aspire Luxury Magazine, which she also founded. So, Bella holds a certificate in business sustainability management from the University of Cambridge, an ESG certification from the Boardroom Africa, and a BSc in radiologic technology from the University of Nigeria and Soka. So you can see this is, I was right when I said she's a powerhouse. So, Bella, welcome once more. Pleasure to have you here with us.
Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. I'm
No,
looking
thank
forward to
you.
the conversation.
I can see that. So before we start, I'd like to remind our online audience that please, you can go ahead and drop your questions in the chat box and we will cycle back to them later on. Thank you. And you can also type in the chat box and tell us where you're dialing in from. So now, Bella, back to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, wow. So you founded a firm that you're very big on ESG. I can see that, and I've always liked ESG. And whenever I talk about ESG, I tend to focus on the G because I always say that G is the low hanging fruit. So
Absolutely.
you founded a firm, and your firm help businesses translate ESG into commercial advantage, especially when these organizations are dealing with capital raises and cross-border partnerships. So you have a rich background, I must say, in practical market penetration. So you must have a good understanding of what can make a business succeed and what can make a business fail. So my question now to you is that your journey, okay, how has your work, that your ESG work and your work across ESG, sustainability, investor readiness, how has all these three shaped the way you think about governance?
Ah, oh my goodness. This 1 hour for this conversation. Let us try. So
Okay.
first of all, again, I'm very pleased to be part of this conversation, because what people don't realize is governance is one of those subjects that, even though businesses recognize it as important, they often approach it too late. You know what I mean? And like you said, my perspective on governance has been shaped by working with organizations at different points of their growth. So I have a very practical overview, per se, of how it's been and what it's obtainable in these parts. Whether it is when the businesses are seeking investments, when they are entering new markets, if they are trying to strengthen stakeholder confidence, or even just formalize their sustainability commitments. But what I've seen repeatedly, and I'm hoping that that changes with conversations like this and with the kind of work that we do, is that a company can have an absolutely phenomenal product, category defining product. It could have, of course, for any organization looking to scale, it must have an ambitious founder. It could be growing revenue. It could even have an impressive public profile, but a term that we use a lot, especially in ESG in Action Africa, is you find that these kind of organizations are still institutionally fragile. So let me explain what that means. You have organizations who have ticked all these boxes I mentioned, but there is no clear decision making structure. You know what I mean? And it shows up in the littlest of things. I think that's what Adeolu and you good people at ZER call the hero phenomenon. And with that, you also find that a lot of important relationships belong to the founder rather than the company. Like, there's something I joke about a lot, for the Yorubas in the room, Tani Babae literally means who is your father. And I find that with a lot of organizations, people still engage with the organization as if it's still just the founder. So that's why I say Tani Babai, they want to know. So it doesn't matter um how strong or how capable you are as part of the organization, but simply because there aren't clear governance principles in place, people still want to talk to only the founder, and everything grounds to a halt if the founder is not able to make a meeting. So what you want to do, what I see in that case is that, organizations tend to miss out on opportunities. So there's something I say a lot, and I say it's better to stay ready so you don't have to get ready. I can tell you, even for me, personal experiences where I've lost out on opportunities. We thank God for growth. I've lost out on opportunities simply because my business didn't have its act together. So like you said earlier, governance is that underpinning infrastructure that you can leverage. I'm going to use leverage now. You can leverage to convert the ambition of your organization to translate the performance of that organization as well as its purpose into trust, investability, and scalable growth. I was in a conference a few years ago, and something that one of the moderators said stayed with me. He said, capital moves at the speed of trust. So if you're not building trust and you haven't built trust, capital would not move at the speed that you would require. And also, for me, I think to frame this conversation, it would be, don't think about, as an organization, don't only think about how to comply with governance requirements like just a tick boxing exercise, but ask yourself, how can you build the systems, the discipline, and the credibility that would enable you as an organization to grow beyond your founder or the founding team, attract serious partners, and survive increasing scrutiny no matter what level of the business you get to and how the business might grow. So I think I've said a lot. I'll leave it at that.
Oh yes, oh yeah, you said quite a lot, and a lot of them, all of them were very quite insightful. And I picked maybe like three key important points from what you've just said, ideas that I want us to explore further, Bella. Do you know
Mhm.
when you were talking, what you were saying, something that kept on coming to my mind was, oh, mindset shift, mindset shift. Then you now said something else where you said that people still wants to go to the founder. All the important relationships are with the founder. So the way I am interpreting what you just said, maybe a lot of this has to do with the founder. Now, people may want to come to you as the founder, but then the question then is, what do you as the founder do to dissuade that? And that brings me to, I think, my next question.
Okay.
Why do you think? Because it will seem as if founders are not doing a lot, or maybe they don't understand that a lot of the responsibility falls on them to turn this organization into an institution, not build around one man, but an institution so that you're able to scale. So, what do you think that many African founders still misunderstand about governance?
Um, I think the biggest misunderstanding I see is that
So, hello, Bella,
governance.
are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I can
I
hear you.
think we're having a glitch. Just
Oh,
bear
but
with
I can hear
us.
you so clearly. Can anybody else hear me, please?
Thank you. Welcome back.
Okay. Oh,
You
I didn't
can
even
never,
realize.
you can never, yeah, you can never trust technology.
Oh my goodness. So I was saying that, with African founders, I think the biggest
Yes.
thing, and this is not even something that is just for startups or rapidly growing businesses, even the established ones, is that they think governance starts and ends with a board. I'm sure, Patricia, you must see this as well. And it doesn't. You know what I mean? For me, I think what founders need to understand is that you need to build as you need to go on. So your governance as a founder begins the moment two or more people are responsible for making decisions, whether it is decisions about the strategic direction of the business, whether it is, decisions around spending money, how the company is represented, or even who and how commitments are delivered on behalf of the organization. So yes, the board is one governance mechanism, and don't let me get into all the different ways you can have a board but still not have an effective board. But even before the board, you have to develop clarity around the roles, authority, reporting, risk, especially in a place like Africa, and accountability. So I think the biggest misunderstanding for me is that governance begins with a board.
Yeah. So maybe let's explore that further. And you did raise a very important point. So sometimes when we talk about governance, most founders or most business people hear board of directors, but you're right. Uh, Governance does not start with the board. In fact, I'll say governance ends with is ending with the board, but the board shouldn't be the first starting point. So I want to take this down, and I'm like, now this I guess what this is trying to show is that informality starts businesses. Businesses start informal. Do you
Oh,
understand?
yes, I
And
agree.
then informal. Then, like you said, you now start to grow. So my question is this: I'm sure you must have seen this. So because we want the session to be practical, so what are those signs that a growing business founder led, you've actually gotten to that point where those informal systems are no more sufficient and you've got to start putting structures in place?
Okay, so I think the first one, and I'm an added follower of ZER, so I know you guys talk about this a lot, is when the founder or the founding team itself becomes the bottleneck, where literally things are delayed simply because the founder has to see, has to approve, and all of that. You know that your systems are no longer enough. And then lack of clarity. And this can be a business that has as little as a team of 4 or 5. Once your employees are unclear about who can approve what, then your informal systems are no longer enough. one I see with growing businesses and even with large organizations, even listed organizations, is when different leaders give different answers about the company's priorities. So you know your informal systems are no longer enough. And then one that this I have a personal experience with this one is when the company is growing, but management can't see accurate financial or operational information very quickly. You know, so I think as in for me, those are a few signs that show that informal systems are no longer enough.
Yeah. You know what you said about when you have different members of management giving you varying or different answers regarding the direction of the organization. What that usually means is that there is no clarity of direction. Nobody's steering the boat, because if someone is steering the boat, everybody should be in line, or there should be a unanimous understanding of what the business objectives are, what the goals are, what's the purpose, what's the mission. So when people in management are giving you different responses, it means there is nobody steering the boat. And governance is actually the steering wheel. Governance is what is
Absolutely.
giving you direction, is the steering wheel. And I think that's one of the first red flag that, oh, there is a problem. You know what, I want to talk about something that you are circling back on this all the time, and maybe we should just address it head on. And the fact that in most organizations, you discover that the founder, everything, nothing happens if the founder is
Without the
not
founder.
there. And there's a term for it, founder dependency. And I think that's a very big issue in Africa. And that's also a very big issue in the Nigerian, I'll say, SME ecosystem. A situation where everything depends on the founder. If the founder is not there, nothing is happening. So my question to you, Bella, is you've worked with organization, different sizes, different growth phase. What kind of structures should help a business transition from being founder led to institution led? And I'd like you to, like you said, answer this from the perspective of a small and medium sized enterprise. I know that in legacy organizations, sometimes these things are already established,
Mhm.
but here we're focusing on medium sized enterprises, small enterprises, maybe like three or four structures that they have to put in place so that they can start that movement.
Okay, so first of all, founders, I'm here for you. Don't feel like we're attacking you, you know. And I think in the African founders' defense, right, you also have to think about the environmental context. Africans are extremely relational people, you know, we're extremely relational. So a lot of the time, even when, and I've seen this play out, even when the founder is trying to let go and tell you, talk to my people, or you know, let them send you an email, we'll send you a report, we'll send you an NDA, you have pushback from the clients. Believe it or not, we once organized an event for a client, and one of the headliners of the event didn't come herself because she felt that the founder delegated her invitation to me as the team lead of the do you see what I mean? So these are things, and she was very straight faced about it. You know, she was like that. Why would she not come to her office and give her the invitation card herself? You know, so sometimes, a lot of the time, and this is me, this is a disclosure on behalf of the founders. Sometimes there is pushback from stakeholders, even when the founder is ready and willing. So number one would be that the shift has to go from personal authority to defined decision rights. Who is accountable, who is responsible? The business has to clarify and get buy-in. It's not just about the founding team or you know management stating what should be, but they get buy-in across board to clarify what management can decide. What are the things that require executive approval? What are the things that must be escalated? And then which matters require either the board, if there is a board, whether it's an advisory board or a board of directors, or shareholder oversight. So this is, I think, a simple way to describe it would be delegation of authority matrix, just helping the entire team understand understand that. And then the second structure would be moving all personal relationships to institutional relationships. It is a problem if any of your stakeholders know only one person in the organization. That takes the whole key man risk situation or scenario into a whole different stratosphere. And even the simple things, this is like where company secretarial duties function comes in, even when a company is still very young. Meeting notes, commitments, relationship histories are all documented, so that way you begin to move from being the founding team or the founders relationships to the businesses relationships, and you have to test it. So even after you begin to make this transition from personal to institutional, you have to test that the relationship has actually moved from being a personal relationship to an institutional relationship. Then this one drives me crazy. Oral information and everything in your head or in some people's heads to institutional memory. If the entire strategy, the pricing logic, customer history, and very critical processes that are pretty much like SOPs, even though they might not be documented, exist only in people's heads, then the business is at risk. So things have to move from oral knowledge to institutional memory. And something Nigerians or Africans were not very good at this, but we have to. This is where, like you said earlier, the diligence and the consistency, and the discipline comes in, is to look at documentation not just like another thing you have to do, but look at it that you are building and ingraining institutional memory for the organization. Again, this is where technology comes in. How are you even saving the information, and then all of the governance around how this information is even saved and accessed? And something I need to add to this, because of the whole AI phenomenon, is I see something beginning to happen, and I don't know if institutions are capturing this. So, for instance, at Kaizen, because we work on strategy with a lot of clients, we are privy to a lot of sensitive information. So, for all of our clients, we sign NDAs. But here you have team members who, because they're trying to do their work, are uploading things into ChatGPT, Manus, and all other kinds of AI tools. So even as a small organization, a growing organization, what are you doing about it? How are you archiving and saving information in a manner that you are not at risk, and you also don't put your clients at risk? I think I've done three, right?
Yes, you have done three, and thank you very much. They're very practical. There was something you said that I want to latch on. You mentioned that there are situations where the founder may really wants to de-risk, to put in place those processes, and you're getting pushback from stakeholders. Okay, let me confess. I think I must have been guilty of that. I recall in those days when you
We
get
all
to
have.
the salon to make the hair, and I'm insisting that the owner of the salon must be the one to retouch my hair. Okay, but what I'm trying to say is um, maybe a founder cannot control everything. Sometimes you may not be able to control how your stakeholder would react to a new process or a new initiative, but there are certain things that are within the control of the founders. And if founders can what I'm trying to say, that if founders can step up and handle the ones that is within their control, and do it very well, then the organization will be better positioned, and even the founder and his team will be better positioned to deal with the external stakeholders. And it goes back to what you said about having management speaking with one voice regarding the goal, the objective, and the strategic direction of the organization. Because if an organization and the founder who founded the business and his team were to continue to re-emphasize that, this is an institution, this is the person responsible for this is the person responsible for this, everything can go to the founder all the time. Eventually, the stakeholders, the customers, the client will start getting the message, and they will adapt accordingly. So while I agree with you that stakeholders can be difficult, especially to make that change and transition, but a lot is riding on the founder and his team and the organization as well to re-emphasize and reinforce that message and maintain that consistency. And at the end of the day, you discover that everybody is going to fall in line like we always do. So
But
I want to
can
take
I add
us.
something
But
to
please go
that?
ahead.
You know, like because I know you guys always want the master classes to be very practical. Is you have to, as a founder and the founding team, as you begin to grow, you have to be vulnerable enough to look at how you got to where you are in the first place, for which you are now able to grow. And I'll explain. At Kaizen, a lot of our clients, I don't know how we got into this this scenario or situation, are financial services, right? Especially investments banks. And you know, money is involved. So things are a bit more sensitive, you know. And for most financial services, a lot of it is done in person. A lot of people still are very uncomfortable doing things virtually or delegating certain things because of the sensitivity of the information, you know. But one of our clients did such a fantastic job, and I want to share that with the audience, you know, with transitioning from being founder led to institutional led, was that whenever he got a new team member that he wanted to delegate authority to, he would make a house call to the clients and almost do like a, this is my, you know, this person will take care of you. I am still here, but I will not be as responsive as this person will be, and all that, you know. And it worked wonders because, first of all, the clients now knew what the person's name was. Because a lot of the time, people don't even bother to find out what the name of the person you're delegating authority to is, because they know they don't want to deal with that person. So doing that consciously, I saw it really, really make a difference. And then something else that he did was he made himself intentionally scarce. So even though he would be available to take a meeting, he would say, "No, I can take the meeting, but you know, this person who he has introduced to you can take the meeting." And then maybe most importantly, he ensured that these people he was delegating authority to were not people who weren't capable. So he actually waited to be able to afford really good hands when he started to delegate. And I promise you, and I can vouch for the organization, they didn't have the Tani Babaye thing very in a short while after the team expanded considerably. So I hope that
Okay.
helps somebody.
Thank you very. Oh yes, it certainly will. I've discovered that sometimes it's the little things that actually make the big difference. It's not the grand gestures, but it's the tiny ones. You implement them, and you're often amazed by the ripple effect. Let's wait for Bella. Technology is really not our friend
Oh
today.
my goodness.
You're back on. No, it's okay. So about Bella, there's something I want us to talk about. While I do acknowledge the fact that sometimes stakeholders can be a bit challenging, but like I said, I wanted us to focus on what is within the control of founders. Now, for most founders, it might be, and like we said, we are actually for founders because the essence of this masterclass is to help them pick up maybe one or two nuggets
Mhm.
of wisdoms that they can implement so that it will be better for their organizations. Maybe it is an understanding or an awareness issue, but when most founders hear governance, the first thing that goes to their head is, corporate bureaucracy, big files, and complete loss of operational agility. So let me use the analogy of a ship. They see governance as an anchor. Anchor stops the ship. They don't see governance as the sail. I know I've said here that governance is actually the steering system, but this is the prevalent idea out there, and we just have to face it. And you did say at the beginning that they know that this is what they need, but they believe it's something that they can maybe
Down the
let's do it
line.
later down the line. Down the line, we'll get to it. So, from your experience, and maybe you've had one or two clients that was able to get it right, and it worked out for them. And I keep on saying this about mindset shift. How do you think, or do you have any suggestion about how African founders, how they can be able to re-engineer, change what I call their mental models, so that they can start seeing that this governance is not a bureaucratic bottleneck for you. It's actually something that is a genuine business accelerator. And this is something that can actually set you apart and help you grow. How do you think that can be done from your experience?
So I think a lot of the time, and understandably so, because most founders start off as wearing multiple hats and all, so they tend to hold on a bit longer or stronger than they should. So with regards to a mindset shift, I would say don't confuse, as a founder, I beg of you, don't confuse protecting the vision with personally controlling every activity. So I think that's the first mindset thing.
Yeah.
And this happened to me as well. When I thought, believe it or not, even up to last week, there were certain deliverables that had to go out to a client that I insisted on looking at. And I was like, and later when I did that, I was like, Ish, Bella, you should be going away from this. Why are you going back to what you stopped doing years ago? So let's not, please, as founders, not confuse protecting the vision with personally controlling every activity. So I think as in what the mindset needs to do is founders need to get better organized. If the founder doesn't become organized, governance will fail. It's a moot point, pretty much, because as the
Yeah.
founder, you have to preserve the culture in a way that you are not constantly intervening. And to preserve the culture, you have to have built the culture of the organization, communicated the culture of the organization, tested that the preferred culture of the organization is what is prevailing. So think about translating all of your instinct, because a lot of the time business even get to the point where they can grow because the founder has amazing gut instincts. So how do you calm down and deliberately translate all of your instincts, all of your prowess into documentable, replicable principles, hiring standards, decision criteria, and even leadership expressions. So, because of the kind of founder you are and kind of business you're trying to build, a lot of the time your organization will fail if you don't hire right. Again, this is conversation. I'm not sure we have enough time for that conversation. I think, as in for me, those would be the main mindset shifts. So, just to recap, number one is to move away from confusing that you're protecting the vision by personally controlling every activity, and then get organized, get disciplined, translate all of these things you have in your head into well articulated, documented, replicable standards and procedures and processes and all of that. So I think those would be the top two for me.
Okay, thank you very much. And this is what as you were speaking, I remembered someone was telling me the last time that governance is all about clarity of role and responsibility and accountability and transparency as well. So, but then just before we move on from this topic, just something I want you to speak to. And, I want to bring it back to what you said that founders should not confuse their desire to control the vision from their desire to control everything. And that desire to control everything, or the reason why there seems to be an overlap, or maybe what I call what is it, a miscommunication between the two, is that sometimes founders are afraid that if they let go, the vision will fail. So the question now becomes, and I'm going to ask you this because I know you have experience in it. What advice would you give a founder who is in that space in terms of how they should be able to build leadership layers without losing control of the company's vision? I accept that a founder should also always have control of the vision, and they started it, but it
100%.
also has to like so. It's all about what's the practical step. How can they do that? Let go without losing control of the vision, because that is a fear. And in fairness to them, maybe that is a very
Very valid fear. Very valid.
valid fear. Yes.
Yeah. So I think so again it comes back to that, the founder having creating opportunities and situations where they sit with themselves and think about the business. A lot of the time we are in constantly going at 200 kilometers per hour, go, 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 and all. And then at the end of the day, we wonder why we're not growing. It's because we're in pure operational mode, very little strategic mode. You know what I mean? So founders need to have
Yes.
develop scenarios and situations where they sit with themselves. And in sitting with themselves, something that, if it is conceived right, articulated right, and shared right, it does wonders. And that is the purpose, the ethos of the business, you know. And this is something that an exercise I went through in my own organization, because I kept on thinking, how do I communicate to these guys what we're trying to do? And I mean, Patricia, as in we've moved from being a marketing agency to, what we're doing now, and even then when we're a core marketing agency, what I always said to the team is that we are outcomes driven. We are outcomes driven. And there was even a client that helped me articulate it. And the client said to me, he said, Bella, you make me excited about my business. So that's the feeling. Do you see? So as an organization, that is the feeling that our clients have. So in talking with the team afterwards, I was like, do you know what? If we're able to replicate this same feeling with all of our clients, then we are doing something right. Because for you to make a client feel excited about their business, it means that they are seeing certain markers that are showing them that they are on the right track, they are growing, they are going to survive this, they're going to thrive. So as a founder, what you need to do is be very clear about your purpose. And why I say this is because sometimes the expression of that purpose might be different as you bring other people on board. Do
Hmm.
you see? So you as a founder might be expressing your purpose in a certain way, but as you begin to bring in other people, hopefully you're bringing in people who are smarter than you and not people you're going to push around. You will begin to find other ways of expressing your purpose, which does wonders for the business and doesn't deter from the business. So first of all is get your purpose right. Be very clear. And a trick for this as well is your purpose sits between what you hate and what you like. So as a founder, think about it. What are the solutions you are bringing to market? What made you develop those solutions? Was there something you didn't like to see? And is there something you like to see? So your purpose sits between what you like to see and what you don't like to see. Again, articulate this to your team. And something I say, test. When you share these things with your team, test. Intentionally put your team in situations where that purpose is tested or the things you're trying to establish are tested. And then the second thing I would say to a founder who is in that space now is, once you begin to delegate, you can't micromanage, because in true essence you're not delegating. Because if you're going to delegate to somebody, just give them the boundaries and the markers of what should be achieved or what is the desired outcome. And if they shade outside the lines and all of that, hold yourself. I know sometimes it's difficult not to take it back, but control yourself, so that way they also build confidence in their decision making. Because a lot of the time founders bring in absolutely phenomenal team members, but they then begin to make them second guess themselves because they constantly have to think like, and it gets to a point where they're like, do you know what? Let's just wait for God to come. So I think those would be my top two.
You know, okay. I want to us to pivot to the audience to see if we have question from the audience and why that is popping up. Do you know everything you've said here? And my key takeaway from it is that for SMEs, small and medium sized enterprises, you need a board of directors. But what you need most in terms of setting up your governance structure, you've got to have what's that thing they call it? Delegation of authority metrics. It is very, very, very important. And I once told someone that, like you said, a lot of them think governance start and ends with the board. That's why I said no. Board of directors is the last phase, because it's usually where governance starts failing, and that is why strategies fail. Is when you get from the founder or the managing director downwards, because that is where there is no clarity You don't see that clarity of role, responsibility, accountability, and the managing director or the founder is doing everything, and everybody's waiting for Oga to come. And the business is not an institution. If the founder were to be sick for maybe 1 week or
And 1 week
unavailable,
is too long. It's not
uh,
available to take a meeting tomorrow.
and everything's come crashing down. So let's see the questions we have. The questions we have from our audience, so that we can take some questions from the audience before we go back. Bella, I still have some. I still have some questions for you, but I'd like to um, move over to the audience now. I'm trying to say, what's the question? Our audience questions. I'm trying to say that now. I know while you were speaking, we were getting a lot of. I was seeing a lot of questions. Okay, so let me read out this question. Bella, someone wants to know what is the process of making the shift from verbal to written. Remember when you talked about documentation of processes is a challenge with small and medium-sized enterprises, and that is one of the core pillars of governance. So somebody wants to know, what would you advise to be that process of making that shift from verbal to written, and what processes should these entities document first?
That's a loaded question, right? So I
There
think
is
I don't
more.
know. Okay, let me, because I don't know the size of the organization, I might give something that might be termed a generic answer, but I'll do it all the same. Maybe the person can provide more clarity. So, basic things, right? Introduce a consistent meeting and reporting structure. Believe it or not, this can work wonders. Believe it or not. And thankfully, you have AI tools that can do this. So I think for me that would be the first thing. And as leadership, what do you review weekly? So there are things that should be reviewed weekly, there are some things that you could stretch to review monthly, and there are some things quarterly, biannually. But for an SME, you have to have things you're reviewing weekly. So first of all, and I'm an Igbo girl, so I'll say this: cash. Where is it coming from? How is it going out? Do you have a
That's
weekly
good. Yeah,
overview
that's good.
of that,
Yes.
as the founder? And then also, again, this is something, founders, guys, take time to sit with your business. You don't always have to be in a meeting working on a proposal. Just take time and sit with your business, understand your own data. Because by the time you begin to review things, you will begin to see patterns within your business. And sometimes those patterns could lead you to amazing opportunities. We don't have enough time for me to break down how patterns within your business can create opportunities. What decisions are documented? So, are there decisions that they should be documented but are verbal? For instance, let me see, what is something simplistic but also can be a game changer? For instance, perfect. You've taken out a loan with a microfinance bank, and then because they're trying to make sure that, and you've paid off, and they're trying to make sure that you're not a resting customer, they want you to be an active customer. Somebody calls you up and gives you clickbait, gives you bait to take on more, to take on another loan or an additional facility. If there's more than you in that organization, it is not a conversation that should be done verbally. It must be documented. And there are certain documentation that should be two-way. So for instance, this kind of documentation, it should come from the MFB itself, but it should also come from you. Because the MFB is documenting in a way that favors them, that shows them what they want to see and what they are trying to achieve. While yours should be documented in a way that it captures what is important to you. Do you see what I mean? So that's
Yes.
like a perfect example of how to document decisions. And then your business, what metrics matter? Remember I said earlier, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. What metrics matter for your business? And then I'm going to bring ESG a bit. With sustainability and ESG, you have to report both quantitative data and qualitative data. So with your quantitative data, there are some data that, if not captured at the exact time, they become questionable. Do you see? Because it now appears that you are, what's the word now? You are trying to
Greenwashing. Greenwashing.
greenwashing. You're trying to model what the information, what the data elements should be, because you're trying to get to what you know is the actual situation. So what metrics matter for your business? So for me, a good governance rhythm at whatever stage of your business is one that converts meetings from time wasters and storytelling sessions into actual decision making forums. I hope
Okay,
that.
thank you so much. Now, there's another question before I ask that, just to make this comment. Somebody once said that if you own a bakery and the recipes are in your head, that you're not
Ah.
running a business, because you should
Um,
write down the recipes so that
mhm,
when you're not there, or if you're away for any reason, one or
mhm,
two people that you're working with should be able to follow that written down recipe to bake the bread the same way you bake it, so that the quality will remain consistent. So
mhm,
that is documentation of processes, and that is something that SME should try to adopt. Document your processes, no matter how simple it is. It makes a lot of difference. The next question we have is, one of the participants wants to know, how do you distinguish between, this is regarding micromanaging, between
okay.
asking for update and being seen as micromanaging?
So I think for me, it would be the task. What is a task that has been given for which you're requiring updates? Again, founders' personalities tend to show up in the business. A lot of founders who get things done by nature are impatient and they have a sense of urgency. You know what I mean? It is a founder's curse, because that's how you got to where you are in the first place, because you have a sense of urgency. So I think it will depend on the task. If it is a task that really you don't need daily updates, again, like I said, we all do this. Control yourself from asking. If it's at the tip of your tongue, count to 10. If you're about to type that message, count to 20. But if the task is a serious one that demands a certain reporting cadence, then let it be put in place. So something I do with my team. So because we're primarily remote and all, we have Monday meetings non-negotiable. You show up and you are ready for our Monday meetings, because that is where I, as a founder, can move around priorities depending on either what I think is important or maybe communication I've had directly with any client. And now my team shows up on Monday fully prepared, because they know that once that meeting is done, you have your priorities for the week, then it's updates. And what I say to my team all the time, if you don't tell me why you can't do the work at the time it is given, or very shortly after it is given, anything you say after that is now an excuse. You know what I mean? Because if you had an issue with it and you started on time, you should have known very quickly if you needed my intervention at any point in time. So I would say hold yourself, from following, from constantly asking for updates, and also factor in and communicate the required reporting cadence you want for that task as you give the task. So that way, if you ask for daily updates on a certain task because of the urgency, and you're not getting the daily updates, nobody's going to accuse you of micromanaging, because at the time the task was given, you had asked to be given daily updates.
Wow, thank you so much, Bella. From your experience, if you are having a one-on-one conversation with an ambitious founder who wants to transition their company from growth phase into ambitious scaling stage, what are the first two? Okay, let me say three non-negotiable governance system you want them to prioritize. If you can just give it to me, one, two, three. They have
Okay,
to
so let me
prioritize.
understand. So you're saying if I'm with a
If
founder
you're
that,
yes, well, if you're having a one-on-one with a founder, and he wants the founder who wants to transition his company from startup to scaling growth phase, what is the three governance
okay,
system you would advise him to prioritize? Three, just one, two, three.
okay, so I will share the governance playbook we use almost like an audit at ESG in action. And the first one is know who decides.
Okay.
Creates a clear authority. We talked about the delegation matrix. Creates a clear
Mhm.
authority and delegation framework. People should understand, not just know what they own, understand what they own, what they can approve, and what they must escalate.
Okay.
Number two is know where the money is. Like I said, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
Know where the money is.
That's
Establish establish financial visibility. So again, whoever had asked the question about what you should be looking out for, and this is something you should be looking at weekly, is you must have establish financial visibility, cash controls, reporting, management reporting, again depending on size, even if you're still small scale and it's not demanded of you yet, but there are so many tools again that can help you to automate your management reporting, notwithstanding your size. And then discipline around company resources, it's very important. A lot of the time we see startups where, because they are flush with funding, they now don't have much discipline around company resources. And then something, this is a warning, please. As I say this, see red signals going out of my head. A founder must never discover the company's true financial position by accident. Never. It must not happen. And then you ask for three. Yes. Our third one is, we've talked about this. Make sure the business remembers without you. Make sure your business has a memory. So I'll repeat what I said earlier about documenting critical processes, explaining relationships. Or with my team, we have certain partners we work with all the time, and it is a critical part of the onboarding phase, no matter who joins the team, because these are relationships that the way and manner in which their issues are handled is a bit different from the general playbook. So you want to, make sure that your team understands the relationships that you have, the commitments. If the business has made commitments, make sure you are not the only person who knows about that. And then, of course, your strategy and performance documented, articulated. Then build leadership depth, right? As you begin to build out your leadership team, there will be those, and I advocate for this, there will be those that will grow through the ranks within the organization. If you build enough depth within them, they now become the vision bearers that, even when sometimes the cares of life might distract you from the vision of the business, they remind you of the purpose that you had earlier shared with them. And then again, I said this already, and a rhythm for reporting and decision making. So I'll just recap: know who decides, know where the money is, make sure your business has a memory that it can remember without you, the founder or the founding team.
okay. Bella, thank you so much. I can't think of a better place to end today's session. Three key important takeaway. Know who decides. Know where your money is. Make sure your business has a memory. Document your processes. Bella, thank you so very much. This has been very, very interesting and insightful, and I knew it was going to be. Thank you very much for joining us. And then I hope that our participants online, that you people have found this to be very insightful as I have. I've learned a lot, and I hope that you two have also taken much away. Bella, thank you so much.
Thank you too, Patricia. Thank you, sir. Well done for all that you're doing. Honestly, very well done.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Okay. All right. So, wow, that was a very energetic one. So, I want to thank you all for joining today's session. And for those of you that are still online, thank you so much. I hope that this conversation that I've had with Bella has given you practical insight on that you can take back into your business and your journey. So let's talk about what comes next. You've had all this perspective from Mrs. Ikeme, but the truth of the matter is that insight is only useful if you apply it. So the real value of a session like this is not in what you hear, it's in what you do with it afterwards. So on your screen right now, you are going to see, you're seeing a QR code. So I'd like to invite you to complete the scale scorecard. Take out your phone and scan the code, and then it will take you directly to the scorecard on ZER Africa website. The scorecard is a diagnostic tool, and when you complete it, it's going to be very useful in letting you know areas where your business will need to be strengthened so that it can become more structured, more scalable, and more sustainable. So I really, really encourage you to do that. I also like to draw your attention to the book written by our MD CEO, Afro Optimism Unleashed by Adeolu Adeomize. That book is number one bestseller on Amazon, and it is a very valuable resource for anyone who wants to run a business in Africa, who is investing in Africa, or who is advising or supporting a business in Africa. Now, you're going to find more information about the book. It is right there on the screen, and I encourage you to get a copy and reach out a copy and explore it. Now, please, we would like to ask you to remain connected with us. You can find ZER Africa on LinkedIn. You can visit our website, or you can reach out to us via email. And remember, I said at the beginning that we hold these masterclass sessions once every month. So thank you very much for joining us today. And I hope I'll see you people again in July. Bye bye.